Hello. Welcome to Almost 80. I'm Bennye, your host. Now that you have rung the bell, come on in, have a seat, and make yourself at home.
Hey, Ma.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm doing good. It's about time for us to do another.
Honey, it's been time.
Yeah, it has. Some people have been asking me, what are you doing? When is the next one coming?
Mm-hmm.
So
well, we're excited to be back. We've had a couple things happen since we last did this. You had a birthday.
Oh, I did.
You did. So you're actually almost 80 now.
Are you saying that I wasn't before? Well, I'm closer.
Closer.
Yeah.
As close as you'll get without being 80.
Without being there. I'm 79.
Yes, absolutely. You are. So happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we had Mother's Day and it's been good.
Yeah, God is good.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, you know what I was thinking about before I really delve into a lot of my story, I thought I should place everybody where I grew up.
Okay.
And I should talk about DeKalb, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
It's where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And more specifically in the Bethlehem community. So if you were traveling from Dallas, going to Texarkana on I-30.
Mm-hmm. Going east from Dallas.
Yeah, east.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like you're going to go on to Arkansas, Little Rock or somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Then about a little better than 100 miles down the road, you would come up on an exit that said 259. So you would take 259 and go north. And you would stay on 259 for, say, 16 or 17 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And you would come into a town called DeKalb.
DeKalb, Texas.
Yeah. The population sign always said, I don't know, 1600, 1612, something like that. But it never changed. I don't care how many people died or how many people were born. And I think it probably still says something like that, even though, the population is really diminished today.
Mm-hmm.
But
so you're describing to me a town that sounds like it is off the beaten path. Is that safe to say?
It is off the beaten path. Yeah.
Okay.
It has a place of its own.
Yeah.
But we had quite a few things going on in DeKalb. DeKalb sustained all the communities that were around it.
Mm-hmm.
There were quite a few Black communities. There were a couple of white communities surrounding DeKalb, but most of the communities around DeKalb were Black.
So when you say surrounding, I mean, I'm getting this idea of like, right now I think of like people who live in cities and then they have suburbs around them.
Right.
And people who live in those suburbs don't necessarily have to go to the city, but they can if they want to. Is that kind of what you mean by communities around DeKalb?
When I say communities, we were not self-sufficient. We had to go into town in order to survive because that's where we bought our groceries. That's where everything happened.
Got it. Okay.
In DeKalb. So we were considered communities.
So what did DeKalb have that was kind of the center of this universe, basically, right? It sounds like what could you find in DeKalb?
In DeKalb, when I grew up, we had 4 or 5 grocery stores. We had a 5 and 10 that we call Ben Franklin. That was an old franchise or something. I think in various places, Ben Franklin. I remember seeing it.
A 5 and 10 is like a Woolworths, or
kind of like a Woolworth.
Okay. Okay.
Or today you would say, what's the store you call it? Oh gosh, I can't even think. Well, dollar store.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like dollar store. Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that. We had one movie theater, but we really didn't go to the movie theater. We went only when our school went up there to see something that was supposed to be educational about the history of Texas or something. And we had to sit in the balcony. We were not allowed to sit on the first floor.
Okay.
We had a feed store, because a lot of the people were farmers and all this, so they would go there and get all of their seeds and everything. And in that same little place was an ice house, because for a long time, before we had electricity, they would bring blocks of ice down, and that's where they made the ice in this ice house. And also at this ice house was a place where they could butcher cows and things and, put it into steaks and cut it up. And I think they would keep it in cold storage for some people, and you could just go there and get it. your own stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So did y'all have cows and things like that?
Yeah, we had cows and pigs and
Okay.
yeah.
And did you kill them yourself or did you bring them up to the butcher?
We killed them ourselves.
Okay. So you butchered your own animals.
Yes.
And did you ever personally partake in such activity?
I did not.
I could not see it. That's why I asked you the question. I was like, I could never see my mother doing this.
I would watch, and then sometimes when when it got down to the chitlins and Mama would say, "Come and help me clean these," I could hardly do it, and I could never eat them. Which
is why to this day you won't eat them.
Today I will not eat them. I will not clean them. I will not cook them. I don't want to smell them. Okay, let's say it like that.
But did she cook chitlins?
Yeah, she cooked chitlins. We used every inch of the hog.
Every piece of that hog.
Yeah, even lights and some of the inner parts of it. And they would.
What is a light? Lights.
I don't know. It's kind of like liver and I don't know.
Like,
it's some inner organs.
Some organs. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And they would cut it up and put onions and season it and carry on. I would just look at it. I didn't do anything.
I'm not eating that.
Yeah, I couldn't eat that.
I'd rather be hungry at this moment. Right.
And we had 2 or 3 gas stations, service stations. We had 2 drugstores, I think. And inside of there, they had soda fountains, where white folk could go and sit and order, soda drinks and stuff. But we couldn't go there and order anything. We could we just got drugs out of there,
Mm-hmm. But they would sell you medicine.
Yeah, medicine. They sold us medicine.
And did you need a prescription from a doctor for most of this medicine, or did they just have stuff you could buy?
For most of it. But you know what? Sometimes you could just go there and ask the pharmacy. You could tell the pharmacy what your symptoms were, and the pharmacy
they would give you medicine.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Because we didn't always go to the doctor,
But you had some.
We always had at least one. Most times we had 2 doctors. And I remember the first doctor, Dr. Crew, that I remember, he made house calls. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he would go out and make house calls.
And he would drive out. I guess he had a car.
Yeah, he had a car. So
he would drive out to the house.
And he would get out with his black bag or some kind of bag and come inside. And whoever was sick, we would get them ready, get them all cleaned up and everything. And we'd have a hot can of water for him and everything so that he could tend to them. And he was really a nice man and I think a good doctor, and they were always on call.
Right, which I can't even imagine, right? So this life of being a doctor in a small town.
You could drive up to their house. And because I remember one Sunday morning, I had a ringing in my ear and Daddy got somebody to take me up there. We went to his house and he gave me some kind of drops or something for my ear and told me to go back and I think it did help, and it might
at least it felt like it did.
I'm saying maybe I thought it was helping because we had gotten in the car and gone up there and he had put the stuff in there. They say medicine is not always.
It's not always the medicine.
It's not always the medicine.
Psychological.
Sometimes it's psychological.
Yes.
So we had 3 cafes or restaurants, but we couldn't go inside and eat. Okay.
Could you order food and get it out the back?
You could go to the back and order a hamburger or something. I don't remember anybody ordering plates of food or anything. The only thing I remember that we would order every now and then was a hamburger. Plus, we didn't really have money to do that.
Yeah, I was about to say that costs cash. Right?
Yeah, so we didn't really have that.
Yeah, got it.
And in the town of DeKalb, there were 5 Black churches. There were 2 Baptist churches, a Methodist church, a Church of God in Christ, and a Church of Christ. Right in DeKalb, and then there was one First Baptist church, which was white. And for the longest, we only had that one white church there, but then a Methodist church came. So they had two white churches there.
Interesting. And were they physically bigger than the Black church?
Yes, they were bigger.
Okay.
They had more of a presence, like in the center of the town.
Yeah.
We had 2 or 3 furniture stores where you could go in and buy furniture and, they would let you have furniture and you pay them out a little bit along or whatever on credit. Most of the stores would give you credit. And like in the grocery stores, sometimes they would have different prices on things and they would give you credit. When you go back to try to pay it off, they would say it was something else, like more than what you thought it was because they had registered something else, So if you want to talk about the space between the time that you bought them and the time that you paid was really inconsistent and slippery. Yeah. Slippery, yes.
There's a saying that I learned from, I think, you and Dad, that you can't be the man in his pen.
Right.
That's the whole idea of it.
That's the whole idea of it.
Yeah.
And you know when we really used that was when we would be playing cards.
Well, that too, because people will cheat
and whoever
you.
was keeping
whoever's keeping the books,
keeping the score. And they would say, "Oh, you playing spades." They say, "Oh, you got 200." He said, "Okay,
you say, this ain't right.
So
let's go back through these hands, try to figure it out." So that was your town. So your town had stuff in it. You all needed your town in order to survive.
Right.
And the town was called DeKalb. And there were these little communities around it. And maybe they weren't that little, but there were communities around it that kind of, okay, let's be honest, helped sustain DeKalb.
Of course. Absolutely.
Right. So it was a two-way street. They supported each other, right? So with all the people in those small communities that were out, some were Black, some were distinctly white, right? But they all supported that, quote, town, which is why when I was a little girl, Granny used to say, "We're going uptown."
We're going uptown, right?
Going uptown. Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a child, I told Mama one time, I said, what do we need to do to become a town here? Can't we get our own post office and do all that? And she said, no, that's not something she did not even want to entertain the idea.
It just was not within her scope of thinking.
It was not. Absolutely.
Yeah. There were just rules.
Yeah. There were rules that, we had to follow. We couldn't park on the main street. There was one red light, but we couldn't park. We had to park in the back of the stores. It was, looking back on it, it was just, and, it's like, that's the way it was. And we didn't rock the boat. And I think that's what terror can do to you. Mm-hmm. If you're living in under terror, that's what happens. And you know.
Let me ask you something about the way it felt or your experience when you were inside some of those stores. So you would, first of all, have to go in through the back.
Yes.
But secondly, what was the interaction like once you were inside? What, because people are different. Not everyone's the same. And so there may have been people who were nice, may have been people who were not so nice, as long as they stayed within the rules, right?
Right.
So I'm just wondering what your memory is of those experiences, those face-to-face encounters. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Some of the people were nice, or they would say, how y'all doing today? Howdy doody. Yeah, cordial. What are you looking for today? And we'll say what we're looking for. And they say, well, I'll bring something back here and let you look at it, because they didn't want you really going through and looking at everything and touching.
Yes.
And,
strict rules about touching.
Yes. Yes. So they would kind of bring some stuff to the back. I remember them bringing a couple of pairs of shoes or something. And they would tell Mama, have them try these on, so we would try them on and see if they fit. And they never really helped you with it. Like today you go in and sometimes they will help fit the shoe on your foot and see if it's working.
Well, I don't even know if people do that much anymore, but there was a time.
True. There was a time when
people
they did
actually helped you with your shoes.
Yeah, and they would bring out the measuring thing to see what size you wore.
Right, the size or the foot size, whatever. Mm-hmm.
But none of that happened. We would just try it on, and Mama would feel around to see where your toe was and all that. And would you get some wear out of it, or was your toe too close to it, and we were gonna have to change real soon and all that? Yeah. All that came into play. Yeah.
So, this is reminding me of, we just watched the movie Origin, right?
Yes.
Which was amazing. And we had read the book Cast. And I think what you're alluding to is if I'm not mistaken, one of her theories of pillars of caste system is that the touch part, the principle of contamination.
Right.
I'm paraphrasing. I don't think it was exactly worded that way, but it's just this idea that this person can't get in the pool, or this person can't be in the main part of the store because they might touch, they might contaminate. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you saw that with your own, you didn't have those words for it, but that was your lived experience.
Yeah. And even though they didn't say you are nasty or you're dirty, that was the implication.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the implication. Yes. And we were probably some of the cleanest people around because we were very clean.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sure. Okay. So we've talked about DeKalb. So we've got an idea of where DeKalb is, and tell us maybe a little bit about the communities that surrounded DeKalb. And when you say surround, some of us might think, at least I've been there, so I kind of have an idea. But when you say surround, these are like miles apart. So these are like multiple communities that are 10 miles, 15 miles, 5 miles a good distance away from DeKalb, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so what were those towns? Can you give us a couple of those towns?
Yeah, those towns were, let's see, Darby Springs. And that was a white town. That was a little white town, Darby Springs. And then there was Oak Grove and Garland.
Mm-hmm.
There was Oak Ridge, El Dorado, and Elmont. Then there was Beaver Dam, which was down near Red River, which was a part of our town as well.
Beaver Dam is actually not that close, is it? I feel like Red River was not that close.
No, it's not. It's a ways.
Yeah, it's a good drive away even now. Yeah.
Right, right. And then my town, Bethlehem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so Bethlehem was south of town.
Bethlehem was 5 miles north.
North?
Yes.
Oh. So you drove, and leaving Dallas, you would go east, and then you'd get off on 259 and go north to DeKalb.
Right.
And then from DeKalb, you go north again?
Yes. Kind of northeasterly.
Easterly. Oh, okay.
Yeah, kind of northeast.
Okay, got it.
To DeKalb. Yeah, to get to Bethlehem. Yeah.
And so now we're in the town that raised you.
Yeah, Bethlehem.
Yes, we're in the community that raised you.
Yeah.
And tell us about Bethlehem.
Bethlehem, I think Bethlehem might have been the largest community of all the communities around. You know, some of my friends and my brother Alvin and Merle and Joanne. And James, you know, some of the people I called, and we sort of put our heads together and we made sort of like a human map of Bethlehem. And we came up with between 90 and 100 families that lived in Bethlehem. Okay.
That's a decent sized community.
Yes. And most families had children, some might have had 2 or 3, but a lot of families had large families, 7, 8, 10, 15, some had 18 children.
Right. Like Granny has 16, but that's another episode that we'll have to get into later.
Yeah, right. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, each community had their own school that went to, 6th grade, 7th grade. They went to 7th grade. And then a lot of them would come over to Bethlehem to go to high school because we had a 1st grade through 12th grade high school.
So the Black communities that were dotted around DeKalb would somehow get their kids to Bethlehem for high school, basically, right? Junior high school.
They were provided a bus.
So they had a bus. The bus went around, picked up all these kids and brought them to Bethlehem. And there was not a Black school in DeKalb uptown?
There was one, yes.
There was one. There were people who lived... Black people who lived in DeKalb too?
There were Black people. There was pockets of Black people who lived in DeKalb.
I see. Okay. But instead of those people in surrounding communities going to the DeKalb school, they went to the Bethlehem school. Right.
They went to their own school in their own community. And all of them had churches, at least one Baptist church. Every community had a church. And in Bethlehem, we had 2 churches, Mount Zion and Bethlehem. And there were 2 Baptist churches. And they were right across the street from each other.
Still are, aren't they?
Still are. Still are. Yes. Yeah.
All right. So tell us about church. What was church for you all?
Church was it was like the center of our fellowshipping and our getting together to just be together as a community and to love on each other and to, serve God and draw our strength from there. And I remember, now they have praise teams and all these things, but we called it, what did we call it? Oh gosh.
Testimony service.
Yeah, but it had another name too. Oh gosh. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, it was a time when we didn't have music for that. So we did old 100s where the deacons would line out a hymn and then everybody would get behind it and sing. And
now there are people listening who don't know what you're talking about. Now you're a retired music teacher, so we're going to call on some of that to ask you to describe first of all, hymns are just these traditional songs sung in church, but what's a lining of a hymn? What does that mean?
Okay. The person who is the leader would actually say some words like, I love the Lord, he heard my cry. Mm-hmm. And then everybody would say, I love. And then he or she, well, mostly was he. Because
mostly. Isn't that interesting?
Yes, so mostly he.
That's an interesting point, ain't it?
Yes, it is.
How come the women didn't line to him?
I don't know. But
isn't that interesting? Okay. Hadn't thought about it, had you?
Hadn't thought about it, right. But anyway, yeah.
Yep.
So they would line the hymn out, and everybody would sing with it.
Right.
And
so it's like a call and response.
Call and response is exactly what it was. Yes.
An entire song was sung in call and response.
This is came from Africa.
I mean, I'm sure it did. I just wish we understood which cultures and like what traditions. It was, so much of it we don't understand and we don't know.
Right. Absolutely. And then when we would sing those songs where you needed a beat to keep the rhythm going, it was really electric.
I'm sure. What did you use? Your feet? How did you all keep? Yeah, use your feet.
Yeah, we would use our feet and we would keep the beat, and it was really electric.
There's nothing like that.
Nothing.
It's irreplaceable.
Yeah, and we've lost that. We
have absolutely lost it.
Yeah, we have.
Absolutely. All right. So that was church, and y'all were you were a family in your community that went to church. So I guess I'm going to ask.
Yeah, my daddy didn't go.
You said, hold on, wait, not everybody.
Hold on. Yeah. My daddy didn't go. Okay.
He
went to funerals.
Interested.
He went to funerals.
Yeah.
If there was a funeral, he would be there.
Did he have a suit?
He had a suit. He would wear it.
He put it on for the funeral.
Yeah. But church, he didn't care anything about church. I never really asked him what his real, concern was about not going to church. But
wouldn't that have been an interesting conversation?
That would have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes we miss the timing. Like when we think of something, it's like too late to ask the person.
Right.
What made his whole family, his wife and children were going to church every week, right? But he had no interest.
And in most churches, even in most churches today, there are more women than men,
Mm-hmm. Was it true then too at your church?
Yes, of course it was.
That really harkens back to this question of, so why is it that only the deacons and the men was leading some part of the service?
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, that's a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole nother thing. Yes, whole nother thing.
All right. So I think you were going to tell us something about the way your community interacted with each other. Like, how many people, you all cooked everything from scratch because there was really you weren't buying food. You weren't buying processed food like we're buying today. You were eating organically.
Good food.
You were eating naturally the way people are paying a lot of money to eat today.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So you all would do would you do community cooking? Like, would you all like share meals, or would it just be that you all were generous if somebody asked you?
Well, we shared meals at church.
At church.
Like if there were annual days, if something was going on at church, we would have what we call dinner on the ground.
Dinner on the ground.
Yes.
Now, were you sitting on the ground?
No, we weren't sitting on the ground, but everybody would bring something. They would put their food in a box or something. Mm-hmm. And at the end of that church service, we would all go out and you would go from place to place and
place to place, like what?
Like from the back of cars is where they would have the food. Yeah. And
it'd be like a trunk.
Like
what do you call it when people do it before football games? What do you call that? Tailgating.
Yeah. There you go. It was like tailgating.
It was like tailgating.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we would go from place to place, and we knew who could cook and what they cooked good and all that.
Because that is the point, ain't it? You know whose food you can eat.
You cannot eat everybody's food, okay?
Cannot.
Oh, my Lord.
Oh, gosh. That is so funny. So what was your mom good at cooking?
My mom was good at cooking most things.
Mm-hmm, she was.
Just about everything. Except, I tell you, she could not make a good crust for those cream pies.
Yes.
Her crust were never quite what they should be. Of course, she made a good crust for, what do you call it? Cobblers.
Yes.
And there's a difference in the crust. Yes. But she couldn't make that crispy crust for...
Kind of like the delicate crust for...
Yeah. She never got that one down.
A cool pie.
Oh, right. She never could get that one down. But everything else was spot on.
Yeah, she was a great cook.
Delicious. She was a great cook. Yes.
Yeah, she was.
And people would come by our house because we always had food left over. And because she always cooked pots of stuff. Yes. And I think that's why I still cook pots.
You still do. You said, let's just cook. And it'd be just me and you, or just me, you, and the kids,
I have a pot of
and you'd be like, honey, we could eat for 2 weeks on this meal.
I know. So people, I think they knew we always had food there. So they would stop by and, as if they were just stopping by to say hello, because we visited each other a lot. and
because you were in walking distance of each other too.
Yes. And we would sit on the front porch and the adults would talk and laugh and the kids would play, and it was really fun. Yeah.
I bet it was.
Yeah, it was fun.
I bet it was.
Everybody looked after everybody's kids. So it's like wherever you were, if you were walking up and down the road, and we weren't afraid. We lived in a safe community. Okay. I don't remember if we ever had a key to our house.
You were telling me this the other day that you said, did you ever lock the door?
We never really locked the door. Our door was always unlocked.
Did you have periods of time where nobody was at the house? Like it was empty?
What do you mean?
Like, did you have periods of time when the whole family left to go somewhere, school or work?
Yeah.
So there were times when the house would sit
Yeah, absolutely.
Like alone. The house was by itself.
It was by itself.
And no key, no lock.
No key, no lock. Yeah, we just go back and walk in the door.
That is fascinating.
No strangers sitting up in there, and nobody had taken anything. Well, for one thing, you ain't had nothing.
Right. You said, what was it to take?
What was it to take? They gonna walk out with a bed or something?
Exactly. Blankets, quilts.
Yeah.
But that gives it's an interesting thought, right? Because people associate crime with poverty.
Right.
But I wonder if it's not that it's poverty of spirit and not so much poverty of things and money.
Right.
Because you all didn't have money.
No, we didn't.
You were poor, technically.
Yeah. Yes.
Even though you were never hungry, like we talked about in the first podcast, you had food to eat. And like your friend Miss Margaret says, God, I don't have no money, but don't make me need none. Like I mentioned last time.
Yeah.
So you all didn't have anything. And the community also had people who didn't really have anything either. And so you could make the argument, and I'm no sociologist, but I'm just thinking you all felt safe leaving these houses unguarded. Right. And nobody stole.
Right.
So it really, and there weren't a lot of like incidents of people getting hurt, right? Or that kind of violence. So it really does make you wonder and question even this assumption that, crime is related to poverty, because maybe it's not.
Right.
Maybe there's something else at play. Because what you all did have, though, was peace, fresh air, and hope. You had people loving on you, even though you were living within a caste system. You knew that you had boundaries that you couldn't cross. But you did have the stuff that you need in order to grow as a human being. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that makes a difference. But I'm going off on a tangent. Okay.
Yeah. Let
me go back here. So is there anything else about Bethlehem or DeKalb that we haven't talked about that you want to cover?
Well, the only thing is, like I said, we took care of each other. It would be nothing for Mama to say if she started making cornbread and she realized that she didn't have any baking powder. She'd give me a little container or something, a little bowl or something, and say, go up to Miss Amitz and ask her for a couple of tablespoons of baking powder,
or whatever it
was. Yeah. And I would go up there, or somebody would run up there and get it and come back, and she would finish making it. So we had that kind of relationship. And I think what happened was when I got to Boston, we lived in an apartment at BU. And I think one time I didn't have something. So I told Miles, I said, go and ask somebody. And he looked at me kind of strange.
He's like, what?
He said, I don't think we do that here.
I don't think that's not going to fly here.
I don't think that's going to fly here. So
but the interesting thing is it may have actually been okay. Right. But in our minds, certain situations, you just wouldn't ask a neighbor that, as you said, but that's kind of how I grew up. So why can't we ask somebody,
Yeah, we had to get used to a whole nother culture.
Exactly. Completely different culture.
A completely different culture. So what else do we need to cover here with the...
Well, I really like
Okay, I'm painting our community and it really was a great community, full of spirit, good spirit. But there were a few bad apples.
Okay. You said they weren't all good apples.
They weren't all good apples. Okay. Because I remember 2 or 3 girls getting raped there was one guy. And
one guy who raped a couple of people.
Yeah, I think so.
Because he was a rapist.
Because he was a rapist.
And
right.
He needed to have been dealt with.
He needed to have been dealt with.
But he was Black and the people who were raped were Black.
Yes.
Right.
And because we did not deal with the policemen. We had
one cop.
One cop, yeah, who put his little light up on the top of his car and hope it wouldn't fall off when he was trying to go somewhere. But anyway, so they never were really dealt with because we didn't report it. We tried to ostracize them and take care of the girls as best we could. But it's sad. And I remember one was my friend, and she was so smart. She was so smart in math. There's no telling where she could have gone, what she could have done. But she was cut off at the knees.
Yeah. She was traumatized, obviously.
Traumatized, yes.
And she didn't recover. And she wasn't able to find the help.
She did not recover. I don't even think she came back to school.
Oh, my goodness.
So.
Yeah. So it wasn't like a panacea, It wasn't like it wasn't like this lily, happy-go-lucky community. It had human frailty.
It had human frailty.
Just like all communities, right? All humans do.
Right. And the time that I'm kind of highlighting here is like between the 40s and the 60s until I left home,
Yeah. And I wonder what kind of lesson we have learned as a people about being able to have some violence in our communities that went unaddressed.
Right.
And what lessons you take from that, even if it's subconscious, is your life as valuable as someone else? Because if he had raped a white girl, I promise you he would have been punished, probably killed, right?
Right.
So the value that was, there was just such a discrepancy in the value placed on each different life. And why? Because I'm sure that the community knew that he wasn't going to get any justice if they had gone to the cops, or that if they had gone to the cops, something else may have happened,
right?
Kind of that they weren't looking for. It's almost like digging. It's like creating trouble where they don't really want to upset that nest, and so it's very painful to think about that.
Yeah, and actually, there was one time when we had a couple of people who were mentally ill in our community, and they would walk the roads. And I remember one time, one of them got a hold of a gun from someplace, and he was walking around, and we were all kind of afraid because we didn't know what he was going to do. And I think somebody did call the cops to come and see if they could, get it from him or whatever. But we were so afraid. I remember being so afraid that they were going to kill him. But so everybody kept saying, please don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. And they didn't. The guy didn't, But, yeah.
A difficult situation.
Right. And thinking today about what the town is like, after I gave all these statistics about how many stores and everything was in DeKalb, today there's hardly one grocery store. The population in Bethlehem, I think, probably has gone down from, I said, 100 families or 90 or whatever. There may be 2 or 3 families that's living there. I'm not quite sure how many, but it's gone down to nothing. Our church was scheduled to be closed because they didn't have enough people to keep it open. They did have a pastor, but,
2 or 3 people coming.
Yeah, 2 or 3 people coming. So when I talked to my math teacher, who is still alive, 95.
Amazing.
She goes to our church. And she said that they were going to try to have church once a month. They would just get somebody to come in and preach to whoever was there.
Okay.
So, and what happened was there were 2 ammunition plants, government ammunition plants that employed people. So people had employment, but they closed, or one of them stayed open with minimal
staff,
operations staff or whatever. So it has gone down to almost a ghost town, I would say, so to go back, it's really, I don't know, it's hard.
Sad.
Yeah.
So it's what's happened to it is what's happened to so much of rural America, right?
Right.
So many different places.
But I think our community was as much a savior for us as it could be, under the system that we lived under, where we weren't really considered people. So
I think the beauty in that, I definitely agree with you 100%. But I find the beauty in the stories that you tell about your childhood is the beauty and the value that you place on each other.
Right.
You had very limited ability to affect how other people perceived you. That's still true today, right?
Right.
But, we really valued each other and had a strong community.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's why we have
survived.
That's why we've survived.
Yes, that's how we 100%. Have survived. We have always felt that it would get better.
Right.
We've always had hope.
Yes.
And we still have hope.
Okay? We do.
I am so happy to share this part of my life living in Bethlehem and in DeKalb. And it's just good to remember and put it into some kind of perspective.
Well, I'm so glad that you had the chance to share this with us, because otherwise, how would we know the stories? So thank you. It was fun. I really appreciate you doing it.
Much fun. Thank you so much.
And thanks to all the listeners who joined in again. And we will see you next time.
Next time, until we meet.
Until we meet.
Thank you for stopping by. I'll see you next time.